All right, welcome back to another one of my technical debacles. So I have been buying parts for a little bit for a new machine for myself to do my video rendering and the little bit of gaming that I actually get around to doing. And here are most of my parts. I'm still waiting on one more thing, which is the processor, which hasn't been released yet. But starting off, I have the Rio Toro Morpheus, which is from the same company that my current case is. I have an older one, the CR1080, I believe, which is the smallest case that you can fit a full-size ATX board in. So I think technically it's supposed to be a micro ATX case, but it's designed so you can get a full-size ATX board in it. This one, however, can be assembled to either be the same size as the 1080, which they classify as mini tower, or a mid-tower case, which I'm probably going to do it in the mid-tower configuration. Because if you'll notice right here, I have my EK Fluid Gaming setup for liquid cooling. Now, what I actually have here is the A240G kit. What that means is it comes with a GPU block. Unfortunately, the GPU block only fits the reference board 10 series GTX cards, which I don't have one. I had actually bought this when I was buying a GTX 1060 before, and it doesn't fit that particular card because it's not a Founders Edition, so it's not a reference board. Anyway, so aside from that, you get a 240 radiator with fans. I have an expansion pack, which gives me a second 240 radiator with fans, and all the couplings and tubing that I should need to hook it all up. The thing about this particular kit is the Fluid Gaming kit is all aluminum, which is unusual because usually it's like a copper plate and a copper or brass radiator or a nickel plated or one of those other ones. But those generally wind up being quite expensive. You can wind up, especially from a company like EK, spending $500-600 just in the liquid cooling system. The kit, or at least the one that does not have the GPU backplate that I can't use, the standard 240, I think retails for about $150, and then the expansion for the second radiator was about another $75, I think. Now, the only difference that will bring is that since this is made of all aluminum, and aluminum you cannot mix with the other metals because it causes corrosion and then it just messes everything all up. So the whole loop is aluminum, including the CPU plate. Copper absorbs heat faster. Aluminum dissipates heat faster. So where the copper plate may be able to soak heat off of the CPU faster, it doesn't radiate it into the water quite as fast. So you'll notice if you have like an air cooler, quite often they have a copper plate and maybe copper heat pipes, but they go into an aluminum fin stack because the aluminum cools off faster. So my hope is, for the CPU that I'm planning on getting, that the aluminum in this will be enough to soak the heat off to radiate it into the water faster to keep the CPU cool. Anyway, so I've got my two 240 loops, or technically it's one loop with two 240 radiators to go in my case here. To power that, I have my Seasonic 850 Gold, so 80 plus gold certified, should be more than enough power. Since this comes with fans and this comes with fans, I have two Noctua A11225s to pull air in through the bottom, and one A8 to fill the 80mm slot on the back. So I should have two on the bottom and one on the back, which is going to be a little unusual. I'll point that out later when I do the actual build portion. Pulling air in, most of the case is ventilated, and then I'm going to have a total of 420mm fans that come with the kit pushing air out through the radiators. So that hopefully should be enough air circulation to keep everything cool. Now, on to the shiny bits. For the motherboard, I went with the MSI Meg Ace, which is about a $360 motherboard. Technically, there are quite a few boards from MSI, Asus, others that around the $200-250 range that would do almost all the same things this board does. The reason that I went with this particular board is that this board, the Ace, and the other one I was looking at, which was the ASRock Phantom Gaming X, have 3 onboard M.2 slots. So there's a PowerPoint slide that you can find floating around the internet that explains how the PCI channels are broken out on the X570 chipset. But basically, the short version is most of the newer motherboards have 2 PCIe slots, because you have one 4X slot that's directly to the CPU lanes, and one 4X bridge that goes to the chipset, which also runs one down here, in addition to the 16X slot. What most people don't get, and it points out in that slide, is that there is an additional 4 PCIe lanes that are at the manufacturer's discretion, whether they want to break it out for more USB slots or more SATA ports, or in the case of these 2 particular boards I mentioned, a third M.2 slot. So that's why I got this one, because I wanted data. And to go with that data, I have what I'm going to use for a boot disk, which is a Samsung 970 EVO Plus, which is the updated version of the 970 EVO, which I believe says it's 3.5 gigabyte read and 3.4 or 3.2 gigabyte write per second, which is really cool. That is a Gen 3 SSD for those who are keeping track. And then I have the Sabrent Rocket NVMe 4.0, which is a Gen 4 SSD, which the stats on that one, I believe it says it's 5 gigabyte read and 4.4 gigabyte write. I'm going to link down below a couple of videos from a channel called Tech Plus. The dude who does that channel is a little bit dry, but he does a really good job of explaining stuff in understandable fashion. One is a video where he takes, I believe it's 8 standard Gen 3 NVMe's and test them against each other and find some really interesting conclusions. That big number you see on the box, the 3.5 gigabyte or 5 gigabyte or whatever, that is the best case scenario. When you break the workload down into different depths, which he goes through and shows you a couple different ones, it doesn't matter if you're using the 970 Plus, the 970, or even something like the Intel 660, which is, the numbers on the box are a lot slower. When you break it down to what he calls a standard desktop workload, all 8 of the devices perform within a couple megabytes a second of each other. He does another video which he takes 1 or 2 of the ones from that video and tests it against this actual drive, the Sabrent, and finds out that, again, in that best case scenario, yes, the Gen 4 PCIe does do faster. But when you break it down to that desktop workload, it's not much, if any, faster than the standard Gen 3 ones. So the reason I've got these, and actually have a third one, I have 2 of the 4th gen ones, is since most of what I do is rendering video on my machine, file copy speeds, so moving the files around and creating scratch files and reading and writing back and forth is most of what my computer does. I'm hoping that the increased high-end bandwidth of the Gen 4 PCIes will do something for me. If not, at least I can say I have Gen 4 PCIes. All right, to power the system RAM, I got 32 gigs of this Corsair Vengeance RGB Pro. Unfortunately, I had to get RGB RAM. I detest RGB in PCs. It's a useless addition. I'm not going to get onto that rant, but hopefully I can turn the RGB off in software, I hope. But I bought this 3466 2x16 kit because it was the best speed to latency to price combination I could find at the time. Going up to the 36 or 3800 kits added $150 to $200 onto the price, and usually you can overclock RAM up to a certain percentage without any real problem. So I'm hoping I can take this CAS 16 3466 and clock it up to either 36 or 3733, which is the high end of the Infinity Fabric clock on the X570 chipsets. It's the sweet spot for memory to latency, to push my high-speed SSDs and my Sapphire Radeon Pulse 5700. Yes, I went with the lower 5700 because I don't do a lot of graphical correction, not a lot of color grading, not a lot of, LUTs or anything like that. I do a simple color grade and maybe some transitions and whatnot. So I don't need a lot of graphics horsepower to push that part. And for the little bit of gaming that I actually do, I generally run that at 1080 or 1440 anyway, so this should be marvelously fine for me. This is the aftermarket card that has the twin fan setup, not the ridiculous blower cooler setup. So, quick breakdown, I'm going to have my case with two 240 radiators pushing liquid cooling, with Noctua fans pulling air in, the EK water block fans pushing air out, powered by my Seasonic 850 Plus, MSI Meg Ace motherboard, running one Gen 3 SSD and two Gen 4 SSDs, with Corsair CL16 RAM, and video being pushed by the RX 5700, so it's full AMD build. So, I'm actually going to make this a short video because I looked in this box earlier and I actually have to assemble the case. It's not a case that you can adjust, it's a bunch of parts that I have to put together. So, I'm going to call this a video just introducing the parts, and then next time I will get into the sections of building the PC. Stay tuned for my next tech debacle. Like, subscribe, do the internet things. See y'all next time.